Hi everyone, it's me again, and today we have a doozy of a video. Welcome to what is probably the first video on Dylan Mulvaney that you've ever seen grace your timeline that is not from some sort of conservative grifter media conglomerate, hypothetically, allegedly in Minecraft. Specifically on the topic of Dylan, we're going to be talking about the recent song that she's put out and kind of the discourse around it on YouTube and TikTok. But first, before we get into that, links, socials, ways to support the channel all down below, including Amazon wishlist, Patreon, YouTube members, etc. And there's also an email to suggest content. There is also like the links to my what's on my face and things along that line, which is kind of epic. There is also the source list. I don't know if I put sources or if I say it. I do it so automatically now that I can't really remember when I say it and when I don't. Also, thank you to my current members and patrons. Names on screen. I have been forgetting that lately because of kind of like not conflict, but how busy I've been, the way that my content's been set up, the recent kind of influx of sponsored content, and the whole nine been going on. It's just been like scheduling things and things have been kind of loopy, so I've just been kind of forgetting to say it, but understand that I appreciate you so much. Thank you. You help with the channel so much. I also wanted to say before we get into the parts of the video that there's going to be a trigger warning for transphobia. This is kind of indicative, unfortunately, to discussions around Dylan. Again, unfortunately. 3 parts of the video. Part 1, Dylan Mulvaney and her song. Part 2, another instance of right-wing panic. And Part 3, the 2 sides of TikTok. But before we get into that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Aura. Did you know that data brokers are people online who get access to your personal information, and then they sell it to other companies? Sometimes you can even just look up your email or look up your full name and you can see who has access to your data on a simple Google search. Sometimes it's sold to phishing companies and scam calling companies. And that's why you're getting all those like really annoying phone calls. Aura is a service for those in the United States and access to a wide range of online security services, including VPN, credit security check, opt-out requests for data brokers, and other services that are using your information. Cleaning out your information online with Aura not only helps with getting control over where exactly your information is and who has access to it, it can also help reduce the amount of spam that you get because of its automatic opt-out service. I strongly encourage you to try out my link today, aura.com/Rhetoric, for a 2-week free trial of the service. The service also allows for you to have all of your kind of different types of services for this all in one place. It's not like when you have Aura that you have to subscribe to the VPN, to the parent control, to the XYZ. It's all together in one place. And a lot of people tend to already have a VPN, a opt-out phishing scam service. You have all these different ones and you can have them all together this time. With my link, as I said, you are able to get the antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, opt-out requests, all that and more with Aura. It also notices when your information is compromised and notifies you as well. With that too, if you're getting less phishing emails and things like that, you're also less likely to get fooled into something, which is always kind of like a good thing because you'd be surprised at the people who get fooled into things. I've been fooled in my day as well. Again, my link in the description, aura.com/Rhetoric, to access the service today. Thank you once again, Aura, for supporting the channel. Thank you all for watching and let's get right into it. Part 1, Dylan Mulvaney and her song. Dylan Mulvaney is a trans woman and TikToker who documented her transition via a series called The Days of Girlhood. This refers to sort of like the day from which her transition started. So let's say like it started on January 1st. January 1st is day 1 of girlhood. Day 2 of girlhood is the second, etc. Which this went on daily for the first 100 days. And Dylan would make these daily TikToks, kind of just having a very bubbly and happy personality, describing the sort of experiences that she's getting as a trans woman. Things such as how estrogen is affecting her, how people perceive her, the new outfits she was getting, things like that.
Day 48 of being a girl. Sorry, I just had to change it up today. And would you look at that? I'm missing some press-on nails. That's okay. I gotta tell you about that they pronoun that's still in my bio. You might say, Dylan, the whole multiple pronoun thing, it's confusing, it's silly. Why are you doing that? I'm gonna tell you. Because I spent the past year and a half of my life as non-binary. And it was great. Shout out to all my non-binary friends. I really got to explore my femininity, but ultimately knew that I was supposed to be in womanhood. But there are days when I'm feeling gender dysphoria or being a woman is hard, and so I want to look in the mirror and just see a person. And there are other times when I'm out in public and people might not see me as a girl or they might misgender me. So that they, them pronoun is a second opportunity for them to get my pronouns correct. And that could change in the future, but for now we're happy and I hope you're having a great week. I love you. Bye.
Dylan has always had a very bubbly sort of theater kid demeanor to her videos and would almost remain like overly positive in them. Even when negative things come up, she tends to approach it with a sort of the glass is half full kind of ideology. And I think with Dylan, she was really an example of the sort of mistaking the kindness for weakness thing. This sort of happy-go-lucky demeanor would actually kind of be to her detriment eventually. People began coming for Dylan for being cringe, annoying, superficial with the Days of Girlhood series, and Dylan grew exhausted and started kind of dialing back on the content after day 100 as far as the Girlhood series went. Then we get this scenario with the infamous Bud Light can. Now, there are tons and tons and tons of videos on this from both the sort of grifter side of things, but also like the more sane people side of things. To shorten it down a lot, Bud Light sent Dylan Mulvaney a can with her face on it, celebrating the sort of 1 year of transition. And with that, she also had a brand deal with them. It seems it's contested, weirdly enough, because it seems by the nature of the Instagram story that she did, but then someone at Bud Light tried to deny it, and it went back and forth. But the other thing is, too, when you're looking at like sourcing on this, in retrospect, it's hard to find things that aren't made by like weird kind of right-wing conglomerates that just hate her for being trans. Now, seemingly what happened was, because beer is a man drink, Bud Light drinkers got mad, and they went absolutely ballistic. People decided to come together and do a campaign called Go Woke or Go Broke, where people and some even washed up celebrities such as Kid Rock decided to take their unnecessary AR-15s and shoot beer cans that they paid for. And apparently the sales of Bud Light did decrease. I assume that the conservatives picked another sort of piss beer to drink. I digress. Then from that point, any of the hatred that she was getting, the vitriol, the death threats, got turned up 50,000 times. And she actually kind of left social media for a while and has been very, very touch and go with it ever since. And she came back to address the controversy months after and said that it spiraled beyond a point that she could have never understood. Dylan has been a lot more private with her life and her mental health and her safety for the sake of those things as well. And recently tried to come back with a sort of silly teehee pop song, and people were not happy with it. The song has a runtime of 2 minutes and 58 seconds, and it's called Days of Girlhood. You'd think that by the reaction to it, it was called Man Dressing Like Woman Hates Women and Wants Their Lives to End. Like, that is quite literally like the level of dramatics that it's going on here. I just realized it's been a little bit crooked this whole time. I'm not starting again. This would be the 4th time. I'm not doing it. So, YOLO. 9 minutes in. It is what it is. So this hyperpop song about being a girl is very silly, and we're going to read the lyrics really quickly. Ring the alarms immediately. We have a code pink emergency. Calling women of all ages. Girls like me gotta learn the basics. Last look, quick change, sip champagne. Playing catch up because we missed the pregame. Pull up to the group chat. Where you at? Drop a pin. We're doing hot girl shit. Get in. Monday, can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning, pick up meds. Wednesday, retail therapy. Cash or credit. I said yes. Thursday, had a walk of shame. Didn't even know his name. Weekends are for kissing friends. Friday night, I'll overspend. Saturday, we flirt for drinks. Playing wingman to our twinks. Sunday, the Twilight soundtrack. Cues my breakdown in the bath. These are the days. These are the days. These are the days of girlhood. These are the days. These are the days. These are the days of girlhood. Every day, every night. Rise and shine. They're all mine. Thick or thin, I'll be all right. Got my dolls by my side. These are the days. These are the days. These are the days of girlhood. Hot girls to the front of the line. Linked arms, no stress, because we're dressed up to the nines. Mini skirt sits below my hips. Dyed my hair blonde. Pillow talk on my lips. Boys on the dance floor, it's finally clear. The patriarchy's over. You can hold our beer. Back at home, we replay the breakup. Stay up all night. Fall asleep in our makeup. Mom brought me into the world. Sister taught me how to girl. Best friend coached me how to text. The boy toy that I'm dating next. Girls who help me show the way. They're why I'm an it girl today. And then it just runs the chorus again, and that is quite literally the entire song. Some of the criticisms, which we'll get to more in part 3, is based on calling this kind of like misogynistic and an oversimplification as to what girlhood is. But before we get into that, let's see what the conservative grifters are up to in their kind of constant state of molding. So part 2, another instance of right-wing pan. I was on a call with my friend Elle, who some of you will probably know from like the recent podcast episodes that we've been putting out. And I said that as soon as I heard that Dylan Mulvaney had put out a song, that the conservatives would be foaming at the mouth. And of course, I was right. And for you, I decided to put myself through the pain of some Daily Wire content. Now, the spoiler for later, kind of like about the TikTok discourse, is that I'm so mad at y'all. I'm so mad at the TikTok turfs and fellow pseudo-intellectuals who gave the Weasley, Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro sidekicks an argument to stand on. Outside of the 2 points that they usually make of misgendering and claiming that trans women are men who have this sick, twisted ideological desire to like ruin the lives of women. With this, we get another famous Ben Shapiro lyric reading. Bitch says radically promiscuous in his video.
But don't worry, the week isn't over. Thursday had a walk of shame, didn't even know his name, says Dylan Mulvaney. Because that's what is great for the ladies. Ladies, you're all radically promiscuous. That's what it means to be a girl, after all. It doesn't mean getting married and having kids. God forbid. I mean, Dylan Mulvaney can't have kids. Ain't no appendages or equipment for that.
And the way that this man has allegedly had sexual intercourse before shocks me to my core constantly. Ben Shapiro calls the song sexist trash. And this is when I became certain that what happened was they saw some of the TikTok conversation around it and how some people that are sort of somewhat a little bit more left-leaning than them, the kind of more I don't know how else to say it, like normal people on the political spectrum that aren't so kind of far right and staunchly conservative, they took those points and constructed them into their videos to seem like they're more center on it and then can attract kind of a wider audience of people who are typically against this sort of content. I think it's also structured to make Ben Shapiro look a little bit more logical, besides just being someone who like despises trans people. But it is still obvious that he does, because he just misgenders Dylan the entire time, calling Dylan a man, calling Dylan anything under the sun really besides a woman. He then conflates men pretending to be women with patriarchy. This is again under this sort of premise that they almost want to infiltrate womanhood to ruin it.
Okay, so Rebecca Black's Friday is a terrible, stupid song. But it's not inherently evil and damaging. This is the most sexist, horrible to women trash that has ever been put to film. And women everywhere are going to treat this as though this is like okay.
As if there weren't already a lot of disadvantages with femininity. Not as if trans people didn't always exist. Because I think it's too, right? And this is something that's like very based, I guess, to say. Because a lot of people don't know this for whatever reason. But like this sort of gender binary related to like quote unquote like sex, even though that ignores also that intersex people exist, is something that is not conducive to like all cultures. Indigenous cultures, for example, a lot of them had two-spirited people. That's a very common example. There are a lot of different perceptions as to how gender works besides this. So no, it's not an innate drive against nature. It's not. It's never been that way. It's just that there's this sort of fear of going outside the lines on these things amongst other sorts of issues. Conflating it to the patriarchy is the people who trash femininity constantly by saying things, for example, like women can't be in positions of power. They have the people who fear-mongered the female pilot thing, calling trans women what Ben Shapiro calls them constantly. Again, degrading that concept of femininity as something that is just playing around dress up, that is femininity. No, if these people are women and were not born in the right bodies and need to go beyond that and express that, that is also their desire and their business. And they're not directly harming women from doing that. It's on the roster as far as our cringe Daily Wire members is the desperate Daily Wire ploy for young viewers. Also the antithesis of me, it seems, but also the same vibe for some reason. Brett Cooper. So Brett Cooper outlines her video by calling Dylan Mulvaney the golden child of the internet. And from that opening, I already knew that her goal was to just be as blatantly manipulative as possible, because there is genuinely no way to refer to Dylan Mulvaney as the golden child of the internet after like constant, you see more harassment than support, even when you have a more leftist algorithm like I do.
Dylan is a trans influencer who blew up in 2022 after starting a Days of Girlhood series to document the transition from male to female. We have a few episodes where we've talked about it. We can link it below. I talked about it a lot back in 2022. But Dylan quickly became the darling of the internet, the golden child of the entertainment industry, golden child of the ad world, that is until Bud Light. But Dylan also became the embodiment of the perils of gender ideology for those of us very concerned about it.
Brett again fixates on how she seems to perceive that Dylan has boiled all of womanhood down to like wearing makeup and going out with her friends and doing all of these silly things, as if it's not just a hyper pop song that she decided to make for fun and it's really not that deep. I cannot make this up. Because, and the conservatives do this all the time. They're like, this thing is really bad. My sponsorship, this thing. Brett Cooper conflates how women are more than their skincare and their makeup, and then bridges into a skincare sponsor. Which any skincare company that's like funding the Daily Wire, like I'm sure they're just putting like petrol, like raw oil sands goop in there just to support the agenda. They hate the liberal agenda. Hypothetically, allegedly, Minecraft. Again, just on the basis of femininity being a costume to these people, how like as if you would medically transition, you would risk the violence that you face, you would put yourself through a state of infertility, potentially, or whatever can possibly happen. You put yourself in a society that degrades you constantly, and you can't deny that because these videos have hundreds of thousands to millions of views each. It's the reality that exists. And I don't think that should be the reality. I'm never vouching for that to be the reality. I think it's really depressing that it's the reality, honestly. And I think trans women should be able to just live their goddamn lives. But people like this will never let that happen, especially with how profitable that this ideology stands as it is now. And the next two sentences that were so stupid that it felt like it sent me into orbit. Brett Cooper goes in to say that Dylan made a video since 2 years since transitioning, like the anniversary. And Brett was complaining that Dylan wasn't that happy about it. Oh, Dylan wasn't jumping for joy. Then immediately juxtaposes this by pulling up a Babylon Bee tweet with a study in it that says the suicide rate doubles for trans women after transitioning.
It's honestly very sad. And something else that is genuinely very sad is that Dylan released a lengthy, almost 10-minute video on social media in celebration and reflection of this 2-year transition anniversary, and there really was not a lot of joy. I mean, in the video, Dylan literally says, "I think I've forgotten how to be happy. I thought all of this would be easier. I'm exhausted. I have forgotten how to be happy." Where is the trans joy that we have been told to look for? We've been fed a lie that transitioning fixes everything, that it'll make your life so much better. You'll be happy once you transition. Okay, if that's the case, with the transition and the fame and the money and the connections, you're hanging out with Lady Gaga, why isn't Dylan happy? Why is it that the rate of suicide for male to female transitioners doubles after they go through their transition, after they get surgery? That was a study that came out just last week. Have we forgotten about that? Are we not going to talk about that?
So let's pretend that you should be citing a tweet in the first place. Let's pretend, okay? And let's pretend the study is real and valid and actually reviewed properly, which to my understanding, it wasn't. I feel like the answer to both of those statements, the why is Dylan not jumping for joy and why would people commit suicide after transitioning, you're the answer to both of those questions, girl. And so is your little boss. So is your wet ass P-word boss. All right? Think about it. Think. We're going into the Matrix. No, because then they're going to freak out if I see the Matrix. Oh my God. Anyway, if you have a billion-dollar media conglomerate that is essentially dedicated to making content that harasses trans people, that is widely and wildly popular, then that is indicative to the society around it and how they treat them. And when people are historically mistreated, this is a history book on that mistreatment and like the realities around it. It's not rocket science. It never has been. But they make it out to be and confuse it and add in elements that are not relevant to further their agenda. Imagine you line your pockets by hating on a marginalized group in your videos and making movies about it. It's pathetic beyond comprehension. It really is. Maybe you can look inwards, and perhaps the constant attacks, death threats, shame, violence that are historically backed up, as I mentioned, might be pointing to this. Then Brett says that she takes the high road, and she's like, I felt like I didn't want to take the bait. And poses as this, like, socially conscious dare I say, woke terms to fit these obscure circumstances, saying that she values women and femininity and she values, which are feminist points. At least Candace Owens says she doesn't believe in the patriarchy, okay? At least she's, like, consistent. You're trying to sound like you love women, you're like, but if you said you were feminist, canceled. Canceled because conservatives cancel people all the time. They cancel Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light, for Christ's sake. But you dance around it. Because you want this to be part of the pipeline content. To get people into this shit. Ça va être ridicule. Ça va être bizarre. J'en ai comprends pas. It's crazy. Then we end with Miss Candy Owens. Our fired from Daily Wire queen. Our jobless icon. Broke. I'm just kidding, obviously, but not kidding about her being fired, though, which is kind of epic. We'll see how that goes. I'm curious. I will definitely be looking at that as it happens, as it transpires. I can't wait for the, like, why I left the Daily Wire video. I really hope, oh my god, I am seated for that one. I'm realizing that once I watch Candace Owens, all that happens is all three of them hand in the same essay, but they just change the order of the body paragraphs. And they're all the same. They all have the same points, the same basis, the same citation. It's all the same stuff. Candace has a little bit of a unique spin by saying that it's women's fault that trans people exist. Which is, like, so nuts. She says that the patriarchy doesn't exist because everywhere around us is the circumstance of women in charge. And she doesn't believe in the patriarchy as if it's like Santa Claus or something.
Patriarchy is over. That is so great. It is so great when a biological male who identifies as a little girl steps out and says that the patriarchy is over. Because, you know, if I believed in the patriarchy, and I don't actually, because everywhere around us is the circumstance of women in charge, right? It's not men that are supporting transgenderism, it's women. It's women like Lady Gaga who are calling other women hateful if they're not okay with transgenderism. We saw how men feel about it. Bud Light. Goodbye, Bud Light, instantly overnight, as soon as transgenderism traversed into a male space. But women love this. They are shaming other women for not embracing this. So if the patriarchy existed, by the way, there would be no transgenderism. Let's be very clear. We're living under a matriarchy. But if I believed in the patriarchy, I would imagine that a man declaring that the patriarchy is over would not be acceptable. I'm imagining this, like in a circumstance that like a bunch of people would say this is utterly ridiculous. Men should not be speaking up for women. But as I said, we live in a different world. We are existing under a matriarchy, and we are supposed to accept the idea that men are everywhere, beware the patriarchy, except when it's potentially actually here, and you have biological males that are playing dress up, demanding that you call yourselves cisgender so that you don't acknowledge your unique womanhood. And on top of that, they are now dropping videos encouraging young girls not to live a life that I would describe as moral.
And Daily Wire people, cite where you get something, for once, challenge difficulty impossible. Because it doesn't exist. And I just have never understood being able to, like, and then all they do is say that, like, leftists or people who are not, or even centrists to a certain degree, live in this, like, fantasy land. You're not bothering and harassing people that are different. You live in a fantasy land. It's like, I wouldn't want to live like that. I just don't get it. Says that if a patriarchy was existing, it wouldn't allow for woman face. So Owens, you're black, girl. You compare it to a minstrel show, but then you also have the White Lives Matter shirt. Self-confirmed Nazi Kanye West. I need y'all to be so serious. Now I get to suffer a second time and get to part 3 with the TikTok. Part 3, the two sides of TikTok. There are two camps as far as TikTok goes. And I genuinely believe that one side of this, which is the side that is just a bunch of TERFs pretty much, genuinely believe that they use this as an opportunity to like voice their transphobia in a more societally acceptable way because they found a common punching bag with Dylan Mulvaney. And they kind of use this context as a bandwagon. And the other side of the issue are people who understand the song kind of crappy and move on.
That song has received so much hate that I saw a video defending Dylan before I saw the original video itself. There seems to be two major points of concession, even amongst her fans, which is causing a flood of comments. Number 1, the song itself just isn't that good. Number 2, the message behind it may perpetuate harmful feminine stereotypes. I didn't want to jump to any conclusions based off of those TikTok clips, so I went over to YouTube and I watched the entire music video. I personally saw a lot of privilege in that one music video, and I understand why some nerves were hit. In some lights, it can be seen as completely tone deaf given how many people are suffering in the world. But that's actually if you want to have a meaningful conversation about this. I want to be very clear, though, that even if you think this song is trash and you disagree with it at its very premise, do not be a bigot. This admittedly awful song release is not an excuse to suddenly let all the hate you've harbored in your heart out. Question people without being hateful. See you next time.
Because here's something that is so painfully obvious, but I feel like needs to be said. And I feel like I'm going to get a comment or two that some people say I'm fine, that I'm conceited in this video, that I seem like I might be full of myself or talking down to people. It's because I shouldn't have to like explain on a platform that adults are watching that you just should leave people the fuck alone. That's as easy as it is. That's why I'm annoyed. You don't have to blow things up to these huge contexts. Because here's the thing. Trans people can be cringe. Trans people could do stuff you don't like. So this behavior that you find one instance of something that a trans person doesn't like, and then you start trying to open this conversation about like woman face. You thought that way the whole time. And you were just waiting for the opportunity. I think something that I also didn't necessarily voice well enough in this video is it's not that there are necessarily no quote unquote, harmful stereotypes perpetuated. But the thing is that Dylan's song is in reference to her kind of very fluffy series and perception. The song's not called "This is the thing that all women do, and this is what it means to be a woman, and this is how all women live." It's not. It's just a silly, very like surface level, just, doing girly things. And it's all the same people who had girl dinner, who did girl math, who say that they're a 25-year-old teenager, do the bimbification of things, that are really trying to throw this around. That's why I'm saying where the issue is that you clearly have not matched your intention to actual feminist perspectives that are like actually fruitful and useful and don't just further marginalize something or someone, rather, in the name of likely white liberal feminism. And I think the other issue with this as well is, again, which I get into later when I start talking about lyrics of other songs, you're only up in arms about female stereotypes when a trans woman does it, not when men will directly, talk down to women. Same people doing this, Dancing to Future, who literally said, "If I'm caught cheating, I will never tell her sorry," and has a whole song about if a single woman gives him attitude, he'll never pick up the phone again. That's why it's like you are really reaching and showing your true colors, I think. And that's kind of my more relaxed opinion on it. Because here's the thing, right? There are lots of TikTok artists that make songs that are silly. There was that Brooke girl who made an entire album that was just trolling. And then it was like all the same song, and it was a bad song. Or if we talk about somebody in a more similar kind of genre, like that hyperpop thing, Aaliyah's Interlude. And I'm not saying to go hate on Aaliyah's Interlude. I think Aaliyah's Interlude is slaying and serving C-word. I can't say that on YouTube, but you know what I mean. Aaliyah makes hyperpop songs that are literally just about how cool her fashion is and how much she slays. Is that boiling womanhood down to fashion? No. California girls were undeniable. Daisy Dukes, bikinis on top. Does that mean all women have to wear Daisy Dukes and bikinis on top? No. Dylan made a silly song about her week. A fake week as a girl. That's it. Now I'm going to play some of the TikToks of this sorts of like misogyny allegations.
He's mocking us. He's mocking you. You might have watched that music video and said, hey, he's just saying the same things about women and girls as men's rights activists do. Women abuse psychiatric drugs. Women are sluts and whores who do the walk of shame. Women are all mentally ill. Women are silly and superficial. He is saying the same thing, and it is the same thing. We are so stuck in a red versus blue, liberal versus conservative dichotomy that people fail to realize that full-throated, full-blooded misogyny can come from all sides of the political spectrum. And I know you've been shamed for years about being called transphobic, but trust your gut. It's misogyny and he's mocking you.
Some of these people are just actual TERFs, and it's just something that's like very bizarre to me. And I think what's going to happen is now that I've put these TikToks in, people are going to start trying to challenge me to like the feminism off, and I'm just not going to entertain it, because it's like I worked as a high school teacher. I worked in schools with queer students, with trans students, with youth. And I see how difficult of a time this is and how people can be repressed into transitioning as an adult. And a lot of people kind of point that as sort of like a issue with Dylan and things like that. It's like, I'm just really like into like letting people live their lives as long as they don't dedicate their lives to antagonizing other people in the way that a lot of these other characters are doing so. When people want to point out the misogyny in music is driving women back, and let's pretend you're one of those turf types, transphobes, you're thinking this is a man singing about being a woman.
Monday can't get out of bed. Tuesday morning pick up meds. Wednesday retail therapy. Cash or credit, I say yes. Thursday had a walk of shame.
Monday I'll go out to eat. Tuesday read some War and Peace. Wednesday talk philosophy with my female friends who have PhDs. Thursday time to realize that I don't want to stereotype the vast range of women's experience that I can't possibly represent. And I don't want to be cliche. That's why I'm singing this song today.
On screen, we have a picture of 21 Savage's recent album, American Dream. Very popular album, mainstream music. Way more streams than Dylan's song. We'll get. I'm gonna read you only the lines to do with body count and how much women sleep around. You would duck if you believe what a say. She got more bodies than my old K. I ain't buying these. I rent them. All these past burned, they're damn near charred. I'm disappointed that you gave to a lame. You knew she was a why you still with her? I know you spinning them like the D. Call an Uber, she done overstayed. Every hour a new one on the way. You got all the bosses wondering what your sex life. I asked her body count. She sent a gif of me and Cole. And then a bonus from the Drake album, the collab album they did, Her Loss. How many bodies you got? Hope it ain't more than a few. I just read you 12 different lines from the same, 11 from the same album. I'm aware of these things. I listen to that 21 Savage album a lot when I go to the gym. And I remember the other day just being like, man, this guy's obsession with how many partners the women have had, while he's just constantly like, I have 6 partners a day, it feels like. It's just mind-boggling. And then I moved on. I didn't make like an essay about it. Not every single thing ever has to be that deep. And when we're talking about Dylan Mulvaney's song, and you've got Rebecca Black's Friday as a writing credit, maybe it wasn't supposed to be that deep. I'm begging for y'all to understand things like intersectionality and expression and how people can just have fun sometimes and things can be a joke sometimes. And I'm going to read a tiny part from this book that I keep flashing around. This is just talking about the existence of trans women of color as well, because they are marginalized to an even further degree, but it also just talks about kind of like the trans identity. And it says, the black trans woman, and in diluted form, the generic trans woman of color, uttered to those by unwilling to say black, today carries the political desire of intersectional politics. A tragic figure who endures the worst of multiple oppressions, and yet a revolutionary actor whose every breath signals freedom, she is the one whose name justice will in whose name justice will arrive. As a performative subject, her proximity confirms her righteousness of everyone around her. The trans woman of color subjection is, on this view, simultaneously a call to action and a roadmap to a better world. The most egregious example is surely the annual hagiographies of Riviera and Johnson. Everyone from mainstream LGBTQ organizations like the Human Rights Campaign to Silicon Valley corporations like Salesforce offer rosy stories during the month of June, claiming that Rivera and Johnson were the foremothers and arco-conservative phenomenon like same-sex marriage or the gig economy. Confining the trans woman of color to the function of an aspiring martyr means that the real women living under that symbolic pressure encounter harsh judgment whenever they stray from their prescribed role. The academic field of queer theory, in one notorious example, cuts its teeth in the early 1990s on determining trans women of color's value to be their possibility of overturning gender norms through the failure to conform. Anything else trans women of color wanted out of womanhood was judged as improperly political. The most dramatic entry in the bibliography of Judith Butler's Bodies That Matter in 1996, where Butler reads Jenny Livington's popular 1990 documentary about the black and brown culture of New York City, Paris is Burning. At the time, Butler was running against a rash of shallow readings of her landmark book, Gender Trouble, which has been boiled down to some readers to the idea that gender is a voluntary performance, essentially no different from doing drag. Frustrated with the perceptions that this was nearly the opposite of gender trouble's argument, Butler proposed that Paris is Burning depicts the real-world limitations of subverting gender norms. Performativity and performance can rigidify the oppressive power structures rather than soften them. In the role of that failure, Butler cast Venus Extravaganza, a trans Latina, and one of the subjects of Livington's documentary. Dylan, while not a trans person of color, I think is something to also look at in regards to the state of the current political climate. Because if a white trans woman is facing these things and you are pouring into that climate of further degrading this person, there is also going to be further danger down the line. This is like when you have those people that like are anti-trans, but they're in the LGBTQ community. It's like they're coming for your rights next, girly. They're coming like it's something that you need to be so careful with because they have historically been in so much danger, especially trans women of color. And the state of the conversations around Dylan is just further worrying me to a degree that I never thought I would be at, really. But to conclude, we talked about Dylan's song. We talked about how Dylan Mulvaney came to popularity. We talked about the Daily Wire point of view. And we talked about some TikToks and some trans history. Thank you for Aura for sponsoring this video. Links, sources, and ways to support the channel all down below, along with an email to suggest content. Other such fun things like the links to what's on my face. With that, and me not being so angry anymore, I hope y'all have an amazing day, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!
Hey Diva, we're calling you down into the Slation for the transvestigation led by Detective Fierce. Now we're gonna ask you some questions. Are you ready, sis?